During the first 2 weeks of our course, we focused on beginner HTML code. This week, we'll focus on the more stricter Xhtml, which is primarily used by professionals within the field. For the purposes of this course, it is just important to understand what is involved with Xhtml. You do not specifically need to know how to code everything using Xhtml. You can stick with coding in HTML. For those of you who need a further clarification or information on how to best complete homework 1 and 2 that have been previously due, I have provided examples for how they should look on my pirate.shu.edu website. Please note, however, that only the examples of homeworks that have been past due have been posted. For example, homework 3 for this week and project 1 will be posted after the due date. So let's review a little bit about HTML that we covered in previous weeks. We spoke about how the href is a hyperlink reference. The ahref tag serves as code for hyperlinking a website, as you were required to do within assignment 1. We also touched on, but have not used quite yet, the header tags. H1 tag represents the largest header. H2, H3, so on and so forth will produce headers that end up getting smaller in size. Let's focus on the div tag. The div tag, short for division, defines a division or a section in an HTML document. We will see this later on when we use it within CSS and within JavaScript. Anything can be put within inside the div tag. However, within this course, it will be most commonly used to break up our paragraphs. Again, the tags for paragraphs are P, close P. This is where we put any of our text within our paragraph tags. So here are some basics on Xhtml. Xhtml stands for Extensible Hypertext Markup Language. It is a stricter and more XML-based version of HTML. We will cover XML later in this course. As a result of this basing in XML, Xhtml is HTML defined as an XML application. Xhtml is supported by all major browsers, which is always a positive when trying to develop a website. So why is Xhtml used for the experts or by the experts? It is because it is well formed. When you produce a website in HTML, you might have errors. The browsers tend to ignore these errors and just post or present the website in the way that it is assumed you want it to look. Xhtml does not have these error handling capabilities. It is much stricter. The code must be accurate in order for it to work efficiently. So why is it strict, or in what way is it strict? Well, you need a doc type. You need to have the XLMNS attribute within your HTML code. Our HTML head, title, and body are mandatory. Within regular HTML, you do not need to have a title. Elements must always be properly nested, closed, in lowercase, as well as the attributes must always be in lowercase. Their values must be quoted, and attribute minimization is forbidden. So here is some example Xhtml code. You'll notice the first line here shows our doc type requirement within Xhtml. You'll also notice that our XMLNS requirement within Xhtml is listed there as well as our title. Again, you will see some HTML pages that do not necessarily have the title included, and most will not have the XMLNS included. Most will not have the doc type included as well. Again, compared to HTML code, you just need your HTML, your head, your body, and the close for all of those tags, and all of your information most likely will be within the body section. Again, within our header section is primarily metadata that may not necessarily be of interest to you, but is of interest to the computer. So why is Xhtml important? Documents used with Xhtml are easily viewed, edited, and validated with standard XML tools. We'll focus on XML later in the course, but it is easy to embed XML into Xhtml, a little easier than it is with HTML. They also fit with all browsers. Most of you have seen a website within various browsers. Depending on the browser, they may come up differently based on the HTML code. Xhtml eliminates this. The Xhtml also is easier in utilizing applications. Later in the course, when we use JavaScript and CSS, you'll see that there are two ways we can do this. We can embed the code, or we can have it stored on our specific web server and have it referenced as a URL. Xhtml also helps in parsing, and it could be, depending on when a new web browser is available or is produced, it should be able to fit properly and load within that web browser, whereas HTML may need to be edited for any new web browsers. We will discuss parsing later in this course. In addition to the previous information provided about the importance of Xhtml, it also fits more associated with the W3C standards and their requirements. Any browser that has XML enabled should easily load an Xhtml page. Xhtml, as previously mentioned, is the more quality standard when using and producing websites, hence why it is more likely an expert in the field is going to use Xhtml compared to HTML. So let's touch on some important tags for this week we need to know. As previously mentioned, the P close P tag is for writing a paragraph with text. With our B close B tag, that allows us to produce bold text. Our strong close strong tag allows us to show the importance of text. Our I closed I tag allows us to italicize text. Our EM close EM tag allows us to emphasize text. And our small close small tag allows us to produce smaller text. So you notice that the strong and bold tags looked a little similar. You can use either or in order to bold text within HTML code. So the example I provided is a bold tag with my name inside, as well as the strong tag with my name inside. You'll notice that they both appear as bold. They will do so within your HTML code as well, so you can alternate between B and strong depending on which one you prefer. Because this is basic HTML, you may just want to use the B tag because it is easier to type. This is perfectly fine. Additionally, the I and EM tags operate in the same manner. They both end up producing italicized text. So you'll notice the I with my name in it, closed I, and the EM with my name in it, closed EM tags, both italicize my name. They're nearly identical italicized. Both of these can be used alternately in your HTML code too as well. Because this is basic HTML code, you may just prefer to use the I tag. This is perfectly fine. The small tag merely makes your text smaller without having to utilize any of the size attributes or related attributes when you're producing HTML code. In essence, you want to use this tag when you want to de-emphasize something, things that are not as important. So for example, if you post something and it's not as important as the other aspects within the HTML code, you may want to make that text smaller. You use the small tag. Keep these following pieces of tags in your mind for now, but we will not use them until later on in the course. The form tag allows us to define a form. The input type allows us to define a form input. These could be a button, a checkbox, a file, a hidden piece of information, an image. You may need to enter a password. You may want to produce a radio button, a reset button, a submit button, or insert text. Later on in the course, we will produce a form, and these will be covered more in depth. So let's start building assignment 3. Some suggestions for you. The H1 header tags should be used for the About Me, My Favorite Sport or Musical Act, and My Favorite Animal sections. When you type up your My Favorite Sport or Musical Act header, you're more than welcome to just write My Favorite Sport, or if you decide to choose the musical act, put My Musical Act instead. We also need to use the paragraph tags to provide information within each of these sections. Your paragraph should be anywhere from 3 to 5 sentences. Any more, you're just taking up space because you may not have that much information to write about each of these. However, you should be able to cover 3 to 5 sentences when writing about these specific areas. So here's an example that I provided where I discuss the About Me section, specific information about me. You'll notice I have the header defined with the text About Me inside. And then you'll notice the paragraph. I put in 3 sentences. I am an adjunct professor. These are the courses I'm teaching this semester, and my web space is available here. You'll notice I use the href link to my site. You do not need to include any hyperlinks within assignment 3. I am just providing this as an example for you, basing on previously discussed topics. So in building Project 1, you may want to refer to Professor Mark Nazzaro's example at his pirate.shu.edu web space with the link provided. You'll notice this is a resume example, which is what you're doing with Project 1. Listing your address while you're at Seton Hall instead of your home address is perfectly fine. That is your address on campus at Seton Hall University. You will, in theory, have only one degree listed, the degree you'll get at SHU, unless you have an associate's degree or some other kind of degree from somewhere else. Your experience is obviously not going to be as advanced as Professor Nazzaro's or mine, but at least try to have some bullet points of what you specifically did at these jobs you may list. Additionally, your skills don't have to be broken down into different areas like Professor Nazzaro's example. You can specifically list a few skills that you may have or believe you have in one specific area labeled skills. Also, please list 3 references. You can list former professors, friends, random people in the course, anything to meet this requirement. And remember to use the tags previously discussed to bold and italicize as necessary. That is the B, strong, I, and EM tags that we previously discussed. As a reminder, if you need to understand further about the topics discussed, you can always right-click on a Windows computer and select View Page Source. This will provide you with the Xhtml source code that Professor Nazaro used to create this resume page. An important note, as I just mentioned, Professor Nazaro's resume website is created in Xhtml. For the purposes of this project, please feel free to utilize Xhtml as he has done, and I will consider giving you extra credit. If you do not want to do that, you are more than welcome to simply produce Project 1 using HTML code, but at least give it a try when using Xhtml to see if you can identify the differences as we've discussed this week.